Very good. Once again, welcome everyone. So today we're going to talk about the path of wisdom. And I want to start off first with defining how we're using the word wisdom here. From the perspective of the Eightfold Path, wisdom is taking your intellectual knowledge and merging it with your experience. And so there is a alchemical reaction, a 1 + 1 = 3 that happens when your cognitive intellectual book knowledge interacts with your experience. So let's say you had a friend who told you, hey, a breakup really hurts. And usually the breakup happens because, let's say this is high school, the breakup happens because, neither person at that age really knows what they want in life. And yet, as a high schooler, you might say, all right, that makes sense. And you go through the breakup, and it hurts, and it feels like the worst pain in the world. But then when time has passed, the pain has gone away a bit, and you're able to think back to what you were taught, that a lot of times these breakups occur when both people just really don't know what they want. And you sit with that knowledge and you merge that with your experience of the pain and the hurt, and understanding then that, oh yeah, I didn't quite understand now what I really wanted. I thought that that person was the one who was going to make me happy for the rest of my life, but obviously I was wrong. And that person had expectations of me that I could not fulfill. And so that's where the wisdom comes in. You've blended the knowledge with the experience, you've sat with it, you've molded around in your head, and from that springs then forth the wisdom that is needed for more mature relationships. So that is what we're seeking, that merging of our intellectual experience, the capacity to think, the capacity to feel, and merging that with our experiences, our lived experiences. And when they are joined together, bringing forth a wisdom that will carry us, will help us avoid that suffering again, hopefully, and maybe even help others avoid that suffering. The first element then of the path of wisdom is right understanding. And this is one that I have found, for my personal experience, the one that I've enjoyed the most, because it's being able, and sometimes it's called right seeing. So remember that these translations are not perfect translations, and they will differ according to your sources. Right understanding is being able to see things as they are, being able to read between the lines, being able to understand the subtext, being able to listen to what's not being said. It's being able to peel away the expectations, the delusions, and the false beliefs, and actually seeing things for how they truly are. So in the big picture, that is right understanding. And depending on where you are reading about the Eightfold Path, a lot of sources will start with the path of wisdom, with right understanding, as where you begin the Eightfold Path. So often these two that I'm leaving for last are often the first two being discussed in other discussions of Eightfold Path. But remember that these aren't steps, and that it's nearly impossible. I don't think it's even possible to work on one and not work on the others. This division into 8 is simply a convenient way of categorizing, but the underlying truth is not limited by these categories and these artificial walls. So right understanding, being able to see things as they are, right understanding is also how we learn. We can obtain right understanding from observing ourselves. And so when you're in meditation, or as you're doing being mindful, or let's say you're doing the hourly chime exercise, and you are mindful of how you're feeling and thinking at that moment that little chime goes off, that's where you are learning from within you. But then you can also obtain right understanding from outside of you. So this is where you find your teachers, your books, just the experience of life itself. These are all elements that help contribute to right understanding. But in order to fully engage with that information, because right now all I've discussed is your sources of information, either internal or external. Well, what do you do with this information? Right? One recommendation I found in Buddhist teachings that there's three things you want to do. One, the first thing is you simply want to observe. Right? So this is the information gathering time. This is the time to just be with the experience, to sit with it, to really savor it. And then once you've had that experience, then you move to the next step, which is to intellectually analyze it. So you maybe try and draw connections with things that you have read in the past. Try to understand what the motive were, what were the antecedents, and what were the consequences. So you're really analyzing the experience. But then the right understanding truly comes in the third phase, which is when you sit with this experience, sit with this knowledge, sit with this information in meditation, and simply allow it to percolate in the mind. When you calm the mind down, when you calm the racing thoughts, when you fill your heart with loving compassion, it creates an environment, a state of being in your mind that influences the connections you make with the information you gathered and the thoughts that you had. So right understanding isn't just a purely intellectual understanding. It's being able to take the information that you've gathered, the analysis that you've done, and really sitting with it and just letting it be there, and letting that alchemical reaction occur, letting that mixture, that mixing of experience and intellect to happen in the brain and in your heart. This is one of the reasons why Barnes and Noble's Buddhism is not enough. So when you are focused just on reading about Buddhism and studying it in class, unless you mix those studies with life experience and really sit and meditate with it and really struggle with it, the wisdom does not reveal itself. Now, in order to get to this point where you are able to allow these elements to birth wisdom, there are three things that you must avoid. And they use the imagery of a teapot. Okay, so let's say you are the teapot. You want to avoid having a lid. So that means you want to avoid being closed-minded. Right? You want to avoid not listening or not observing, or selectively choosing what to observe and what not to observe. And so the more open the lid is of this teapot, the more wisdom you have the potential for. So if I bring that down to sort of an everyday experience, that means that closing yourself off to someone else simply because of their political views, that is a way of closing the lid on the teapot. Not listening to truths or words of wisdom because it comes from a religion that's not Buddhism. That is a form of closing the lid. So you want to be open to these ideas, you want to be open to these experiences. At a deeper level, it also means being aware and mindful of your own biases, your own inclinations, so that you are aware of how your filters will color the information that you're obtaining. And the idea is, the goal is to get to the point where you're seeing things as they really are, not just how you would like them to be or expect them to be. The other flaw you want to avoid is you want to avoid having a hole in the teapot. So when you fill this teapot with wisdom, it's just going to leak out another hole. And so it's the in one ear and out the other experience. It's the listening to a talk, but you're tuning out. And so you hear the words, but you're not really engaging with the information. And so it's going in one ear and out the other. It's when you're reading the book, but then you start daydreaming, but you're still reading the words. All right. So that's the hole in the teapot. That's when you've let your mind wander instead of concentrating and being focused, which were some of the tools that we talked about last week, or the paths, the right concentration. Typically, then, that hole in the teapot is when we're just not being mindful, not really engaging in the information, not really engaging in the experience, not being present in the here and now. And so when you're not present in the here and now, it's like having a hole in the teapot and information is just going past you rather than you engaging with it. The last flaw is to have the teapot partially filled with unwholesome stuff, is how they call it, unwholesome liquids, unwholesome materials. One of the things that we will see in Buddhism over and over again is that the intoxicants. So Buddhism, one of the precepts is not to ingest intoxicants. And a lot of people just think about that means no drinking and drugging. But it's more than just no alcohol and drugs. Intoxicants are if you are engaging in, let's say you get your news only from an extreme point of view. All right, either way, left or right. If it's an extreme point of view, then that is an unhealthy, unwholesome effect on the brain. It is as if you had unwholesome liquid in the teapot. And so when you mix in other tea or wholesome tea or medicinal tea, it will not be as effective. And so from the Buddhist perspective, that extreme in either political view is not the middle path. And you will hear that middle path theme and imagery used a lot in Buddhism to find that balance. And you cannot find that balance if you only listen to extremes. Unhealthy thinking is also things like racism, sexism, any form of prejudice or bigotry. Those are all unwholesome, unhealthy ways of thinking and biases that will influence and will dilute any true wisdom that is poured into the teapot. I think that's all I'll say on right understanding. So if I had to summarize it all for right understanding, the goal here is that you want to really penetrate reality. You want to be mindful of how your mind filters and fogs and obfuscates your ability to see the world as it really is. Your upbringing, your past, all those things can affect how you see the world. And the more you're able to see the world as it is, and the more you're able to sit with it, analyze it, and allow that intellectual and experience to mix, the greater wisdom you will experience. It is by doing this you will gain greater and deeper understanding of Buddhist concepts such as no self or interdependent being, or impermanence. And so those are topics I'll talk about later on, but they're typically more advanced topics because it does require having spent some time helping your mind get used to seeing the world as it really is. Good. The next path is, the next one is right thought. And right thought is, while right understanding addresses ignorance, and ignorance is a source of suffering, the other two sources of suffering, attachments and aversions, are addressed by right thought. So right thought or right thinking is your mindset. That's a good word for it. What is your mindset? What is your default way of thinking? And what we want to try and do is to set a default mode of thinking where you engage in renunciation, and this is how you address attachment, and loving compassion, and this is how you address aversion. So let me back up a bit. Attachment. Attachment is when we grasp to hold on to, try to hold on to something, or when we're stuck in the past, that's a form of attachment. When you just can't let go of something. When you have a belief that you can't be happy until you achieve a certain thing, or until you've have the perfect marriage or relationship, or have the right degree or make the right amount of money. So those are all forms of attachment to thinking that become obstacles to your being able to be happy right here and now. So we have all these attachments that we have to slowly weed out, and it's a lifetime of work. It's many lifetimes of work if you believe in reincarnation. Aversion is that those things that you push away that you don't want in your life. So that's fear, anxiety, anger. When you have those feelings, usually it's some form of aversion. Right? Fear of the future. You don't want the bad stuff to happen. But what right thought tells us is that if you want to get away with attachment, it's sort of the renunciation, the letting go. It doesn't mean that you have to give away your house, your car, and everything. What you want to renounce is the idea that you cannot be happy without those things. And so there are times when it does help to get rid of stuff. And we have many examples of very holy men and women who renounced all their worldly possessions and either lived with nothing, or in the Buddhist perspective, they'll have just 2 robes and a begging bowl and their sandals, and that's all they have. Another form of renunciation is, for example, when you live in community, whether it be a community of religious people or your own family, your household becomes a community. The idea that that's not my Coke, or that's not my chair, right? Or that's not my desk. That may be the desk that I use and I have set up the way I like it, but it's not mine. And so if someone else gets on there, I don't get upset. All right. And so it doesn't mean that you have to get rid of the desk. You just have to get rid of the expectation that you're the only one who can use that thing. All right. So that's renunciation. And that's how you help with attachments. All right. That's how you try to get rid of attachments, is by letting go and not grasping. Now, I've used this imagery before, and I won't go too deeply into it. Some of you have heard me use the imagery of the butterfly. Okay. Now, when the butterfly lands on your hand, you may be, oh, that's wonderful. And attachments would mean that you're want to hold on to the butterfly because you don't want to let it go, and you end up crushing it. While non-attachment is leaving your hand open, enjoying the butterfly while it's there, and when the butterfly flies away, you understand that it's being the butterfly. So when someone is sitting at your desk or your spot, you understand that that spot is acting as a spot. It was never yours. Right? It may be one you use often, but it's not your spot. And when it's available, you can still use it. But whether it's available or not, it does not affect your happiness. Aversion or loving compassion is the idea that we want to, let me make sure I'm gonna look at my notes real quick. Oh, I forgot something really important on renunciation. I read this phrase and it really struck me. The pleasure of the senses are like salt water to the thirsty person. The pleasure of the senses are like salt water to the thirsty person. So this idea that what it's trying to get at is the idea that we can only be happy by engaging our senses to an extreme or even to a little bit, and thinking that that will lead us to happiness, that is akin to trying to drink salt water when you're thirsty. It'll only make you more thirsty. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy that piece of cake. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy running, or you can't enjoy whatever you enjoy, watching TV. It means that you understand at a very deep level that that's not enough to make you happy, that that's a superficial happiness that will end. And that the goal is to turn inwards and to tap into an inner joy that does not end. Finally, we get to sort of the love and compassion. Love and compassion is this idea that we're all suffering. And as a result, you want all of us, including myself, to not suffer anymore. And so that's the seed of love. Right? Think about when you've really fallen in love, or when you felt love for someone. You did not want to see that person suffer. You wanted to make that person happy. You wanted to take care of that person, wanted to do things for that person. Right? Your mother, your father, your spouse, boyfriend or girlfriend, a friend, coworker, someone that you love and you just really want to take care of them. All right. That's what you want to cultivate for everyone, including yourself. Okay. So you have to also cultivate a desire for your own self to not suffer either. I don't want to suffer, so I'm going to do my best to rid myself of my attachments, rid myself of my ignorance, rid myself of my aversions, because I love myself that much. And if I can, along the way, help others do the same. So that is at a basic level what love and compassion is from the Buddhist perspective. If you think about what I've talked about today, the right understanding and the right thought, you can see how and why so many people may start their discussions on the Eightfold Path with these two. You need to be able to see the world as it really is. You need to develop loving compassion to motivate you, not only to learn and to gain that wisdom for yourself, but for others as well. But here again, we see how this isn't a linear path. We need these right thought and right understanding to live a good moral life. which is the first grouping that I discussed. Why do I want to live a moral life? Because I love myself and I love others. Right? Why do I live a moral life? Because I understand that an immoral life leads to a lot of the things that make me suffer. Why do I want to develop my mind? Through meditation and concentration and right effort, which is the second grouping that I discussed. All right? So you understand that those are wonderful tools that help you achieve that inner joy and peace. And you understand that you need to put effort into it, but you can't put so much effort that you give up. And you understand that concentration is also just a tool that will be used to get to a deeper understanding or the wisdom. So all of these are interconnected. You cannot practice one without practicing the others. What I suggest then is pick the path that most appeals to you and start there. Learn a little more about it. Spend some time really using those 3 steps that I discussed in right understanding. So you may want to listen to a teacher talk about let's say you want to focus on right effort. So you want to read up on it, right? You want to listen to talks on it. So that's the first thing, is to gather your information. Then you want to experience it. And so you want to experience what it's like when you put too much effort into something and you burn yourself out. Or you want to experience when you're kind of not really, you're kind of, what do they say, half-assing it and not really achieving anything. So that's low effort. And so once you've gathered those experiences, once you've gathered the book knowledge, then you sit with it in meditation and allow the wisdom to percolate. So that's what I suggest to you to do. Pick a path that you read, that you kind of feel more called to, and use those 3 steps over time, and really just learn to relish each of the paths. And what will happen is that you will start working on all of them, and you'll know you're doing it right because you will suffer less, you will be happier, you'll be more loving and more compassionate. So those are the signs you want to seek out. When you are tapping into something that's really giving you an inner joy, that's a good sign that something's right, that you want to cultivate that more. When you are feeling more loving and compassion, that's a good sign. When you're feeling the opposite, those are your warning signs that that's not the right way to go. So if you're still angry at your coworker, still angry at your spouse, still angry at your family member, then that's a sign that you're not doing something right. Right? They may have done what you are angry about them, but you don't have to stay angry about it. I'll leave it there. I'm going to open it up. If you need a question to help stimulate the discussion, then the question would be, which of the Eightfold Path most appealed to you and why? But you can also just share insights, comments, or questions you may have. So just unmute yourself when you're ready to discuss, and I'll just shut up now for a while.
So yeah, I had a question, I guess. So I guess this has to do probably with impermanence, and I guess I'll give you the specific example. So trying to better the community, and especially nowadays with the whole masking situation and going forward with this misinformation coming at you. I've been struggling with trying to figure a way to actually internalize, I think, the truth that I found to myself, or like that you helped develop, that I find, of realizing that people may not necessarily want to deal with logic and reasoning, and I find myself being roped into like their arguments, and I feel like many of their arguments are designed to get a rise and not actually be productive. So it's like it's hard because you expect most people to want to better things and actually have a conversation and actually look at things around them to try to make decisions. But I mean, I guess it comes into two questions, like how do you keep from the stimulus to getting to you, and how do you internalize that truth that you already know? I guess you did say like, meditate on it and stuff, but do you have any tips for
Yes,
identifiers, triggers, et cetera, et
you,
cetera?
you actually said the tripwire. I heard the word expect, and I forgot what you said afterwards, but you're expecting them to engage logically. You're expecting them to listen to reason. And that's causing you suffering because you are not seeing the reality of the situation. There are people who temporarily, because of impermanence, want to see the world burn. Why? Because they themselves may be angry, they themselves may feel disenfranchised, they themselves may feel like they've gotten a raw deal, and if I'm going to get the raw deal, so is everyone else. So there may be other underlying motives for why they, at the moment, are not engaging in reasonable, logical thinking. And so there you're mixing the impermanence with the reality of the situation. All right. In your meditations, you may want to reflect back on moments in your own life when you wouldn't listen to logic and reason. And that might then give you some insight as to why these people are not listening to logic and reason. So yeah, I think the first step is realizing the tripwire, the expectations you have. And this goes to everyone. If you're expecting everyone to think like you think, that's going to cause a problem for you. So that's the first expectation to sort of you hold lightly. I hold lightly to the expectation or the idea that people want to reason. And when I encounter someone who does not want to reason, then that's like the butterfly flying away. All right, it's just not going to apply for everyone. But if Buddhism is correct, that person does want to be happy. That person wants to reduce suffering. And so start it there. That's the common ground.
Okay, thank you.
I like what you said too about it was just kind of your in between thoughts, and you said it's just hard, and that caught me too, because it is difficult. And I think for me, when I realized it's really hard, I kind of realized the gears are meshed. I'm truly understanding what's happening here, because if I didn't think it was hard, that might not mean that I'm making an effort. I've made an effort to communicate to this person, but it's not working. And rather than getting all caught up, the right thought is like you said, it's very difficult. We can sit back now and analyze it and go, yeah, I just should say this and this. But in the heat of the moment, I agree with you. Sometimes it's difficult, but I think that kind of means that you're in the right, you're in a good state of mind if you realize that it's difficult because you're trying to do the right thing. Does that make sense? But I kind of caught that from what you were saying.
I think it's also good to reflect back on how often you have this false belief that you should think like me because I'm right. And we forget that that might be right for us for right now, because we've even changed our beliefs and views. And so when we incorporate that impermanence, when we remember, hey, even my own beliefs can change, then that softens things up. It's the rigidity of thinking in our own mind of how should be. That's a form of attachment. It should be this way. And that creates suffering within us. That causes the anger and the sadness, the disappointment. And so it should be, but it's not. Or it may not be, or it may only be during certain situations. Right, so incorporate more of that impermanence. All right, any other thoughts, questions, insights, things you'd like to share?
It occurred to me to maybe remind people that we're keeping not only the videos of the Dharma talks, but also like the documents for the parables we've been doing. All that's being stored on our Facebook, in the Facebook group. And also we have an awesome discussion forum there that I don't think we're taking advantage of. And so I would just encourage, if you do go to the Facebook page and something's on your mind, go ahead and throw it in there and kick off a discussion. That might be a really good way to share some more stuff during the week.
Gosh, or if you have an aha moment,
yeah, exactly.
That would be wonderful to share.
Yeah, if something occurs to you, like comes out of the blue, it's like, aha. Like you say, share that.
Yeah. All right, then I'll just, go ahead, Vanessa.
Just a quick comment, just that I like the metaphor you used of the teapot and the part about, don't keep the teapot closed. So I think one of the challenges I come across in right understanding is closing the teapot, just whether it's, on, certain people based on, ideological viewpoints, or I tend to just close the teapot on them without, and I guess that might hinder my right understanding process. So that's something that I would like to work on.
Awesome, very good goal. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I struggle with it a lot also. And so it's something that it's a work in progress for many of us.
That's why they call it practice.
Oh yeah, that's really what it is, practice. It helped me to realize that my experiences are different from the other person's experiences. And as a result, that's maybe why we have such opposing views. Because from my experiences and my upbringings, my current beliefs are the best ones. But it is unreasonable of me to expect other people to have the same experiences I had. And so from their limited knowledge, just like I have my limited knowledge, from their perspective, their views are right for them. And I love, Go ahead.
Go ahead. I have one comment. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
To expand on that conversation about having different points of view. It's like we are not, in my perception, we are not here to change anybody. We're here is just to work on ourselves. So as long as you express your point of view, and if you cannot get along with the other person, if the other person have a different point of view, just express your point of view and let it go. I think that that's the wisdom. Just let it go. It will work out itself somehow. Because there is another belief too, that everything that we are encountering, and I don't know if this is coming from Buddhism or something else, but our world is just like a mirror of ourselves. So if we are encountering resistance, maybe there is something within us that we need to work out. That's when the meditations are coming very handy. Like what Alex was saying earlier, we need to look in ourselves why we're going through certain situation. I just wanted to add that information.
That's great. I totally agree.
I like that. That's a really, and that reminds me of what I said earlier, that sometimes we are invested on making the other person believe as we believe. They must think like us. And it's that false belief that they must think like us that causes us to get angry and frustrated. Well, I don't see why you don't get it. It's so simple and obvious.
And who say that they are the right ones and we are the wrong ones?
Yep.
So
I love, there's an image I saw recently, and it's just another version of the story of the monks, the blind monks holding or touching the elephant. I don't know if you've seen that. So there's a story, a parable of 3 blind monks who were asked to touch an elephant, and each one touched a different part of the elephant. One said, "This is a hose," while they were holding to the trunk. One said, "No, you're an idiot. This is a tree trunk," while he was holding onto the leg of the elephant. And so you're both wrong, and you're both morons. This is a paintbrush, as this monk held onto the tail of the elephant. So each of us hold a part of the truth.
mhm.
The most recent modern image I saw was a 3-dimensional image of a cylinder in space, but light was shining from 2 different directions. From one direction, the shadow of the cylinder was a square. From the other direction, the shadow of the cylinder was a circle, but it was a cylinder, not a square or a circle. So our perspectives are like different angles of light, and the other people's have a different perspective of light. But we each have a bit of the elephant, a little bit of the truth. And so when we learn to look deeply, to read between the lines, to not be affected by the emotional bait of those words, and to look at the underlying feelings and anger and frustration, then we start getting into the deeper truths, and then we can be more effective. All right, 7:33. Great discussion, great time. Thank you all very much for being here.